If you're new here, this is my 1976 Triumph Stag that is rotten to hell that I've been trying to repair. Previously, we welded the other side, put new sills on, put new floor pans on, put new outriggers in. After spinning the car around, we made a start on this side. After bracing it up and cutting it apart, there's now the big job of tidying up all the edges, getting the rear subframe mount out, so we can take a look at the rust there, because that does also look slightly worse. Now we can start getting this side back together.
Firstly, I needed more access, so I had to chop away a bit of that rear quarter panel. After that, I was free to get the rear subframe mount out. That then gave us access to look at the awful rust on this panel. Now it does look bad around the mount, it'll just need a good patch on there. Obviously for MOT standards, it'll need to be out of thick metal, thicker than original. On close inspection, the original puck is only held on with 3 spot welds. That is to the lower skin that's rotten away.
Originally I had like a 3mm plating that was plug welded in. Obviously I've had to patch it because you can't buy these, and because of MOT standards, because I will be sending it for MOT, I've patched it with thicker metal and then I've seam welded it. So originally it was plug welded, so this should be stronger. It's not the prettiest, but it should do a nice job, and once painted up it will look actually reasonably well. Obviously I'm now going to have to box off the front section of it and then round the sides as well. So we have now skipped forward just a little bit because I wanted to do things slightly differently than the other side. On the other side, after doing all this, I then welded up the inner sill and repaired the back end. Now I have repaired the back mount, but before repairing the inner sill, I've decided to do the outriggers that come out, because on the Stags the floor pan sits underneath at the inner sill and then it sits on top at the other end. Quite a weird design. Most floors just slot in and you can plug weld them, but yeah, as we saw in one of the previous videos when we did the other side, they go underneath at the inner sill. So if we leave the inner sill repaired till last, that allows us to basically slot the floor pan in as we're lining everything up, which does make it easier for fitting it rather than just bashing it in. So yeah, here's the outriggers. But yeah, I've not repaired the inner sill at all. But having not repaired the inner sill does make it far easier if you try fitting the floor pan, because I can just literally just post it through. Just like that. Also, another thing that I did want to do, because I remember on the last one, this sort of indentation here did not line up with the front chassis leg at all, because these are patterned parts. If I could have left this lip here on the inside of the chassis leg, then it would have been quite simple. I could have just got my joggler and punch, trim this excess off the panel. I could have just punched a load of holes in, because obviously drilling takes quite a long time, and that would have saved all the marking out, all the lining up. But unfortunately, if we're looking at this, I don't know how easy it will be to see on camera. With all the pitting that's all over it, it's far too thin. So I'm going to have to chop it out and then either weld a new section in or use the floor, and I've not yet decided what I'm going to do there. So there's the floor roughly in. Obviously there's a slight contour to the gearbox tunnel and the panels are square. What I did on the other side was I basically laid it so it was literally on top of the gearbox tunnel, and then went along with a nice fine chisel and chiseled it sort of to the contour. But because I want to do something slightly different here, what I'm thinking is I'm going to cut to 5mm within that. I'll put a scorer along there, cut along there, use the excess as a patch for this very thin section here, and then I can literally just get my hole punch all the way along, and then I should be able to fit it on the end somewhere here. I don't know who decided to make these, but would it really be hard with today's technology? They could 3D scan the gearbox tunnel of the car and actually have this laser cut properly. They are cheap repair panels, to be fair.
So no going back here, it's off with the excess. As you can see, the angle grinder makes light work of this.
You'll see it lines up pretty well. But then if you look further up, it's just awful. There's actually no way in hell you can actually get these floors to fit properly. Just got to do your best with them, I guess. And now I'm just going to give it a little paint, chop that lip out there.
Insert 10-second clip of 2 hours of chiseling.
And then I'm going to repair that inner edge. Hopefully, possibly using the excess we've got. Now ready to take the new floors. One section going along the left hand side. Put my trim down floor pan in. Then it's quite easy just to plug weld it all around the outside. Put some crust in there, and then it's had a good coat of red oxide primer. Hopefully it should stop future rust. I've just been doing some angle grinding in here. I've got it all dressed up, I've got the inner edge where I was putting 2 bits in, I've got that all welded in there.
And there's the first section welded in. Please note it's very hard to weld with your arms stretched out like mine was.
And while I was doing that, my dad's been playing around with the floor pan. A few bits on this that we've had to adjust. We're looking at it here, it goes that orientation. You saw previously that we trimmed this edge off here to use it as a repair panel for the inner gearbox tunnel. But we also had to take this little bit out here for the bolt. We've had to mark out and drill loads of holes. This floor pan here actually seems to fit a hell of a lot better than the other side, which is just the zinc primer ones. The only other bit we needed to trim a little bit more off this edge here, that's the edge that sits under the inner sill, just because there's still the original lip that comes down and it was just going a little bit past it. So that should be fine. Probably drill some holes in here maybe, but I'm not quite sure yet because it might be easier just to seam into it.
Right, and now we can make a start getting the floor in.
And once again, we have run out of gas, but you might notice that I still actually have 2 gas bottles. That is because the guy that sorts us out with this gas is Adam's Gas. Now, it's a hobbyist gas place, and they kept putting the prices up. If you remember correctly, I got a bottle in September, and it was 40 quid for the refill. Obviously, I've already paid a deposit on the bottle. And then in January, when I picked up another bottle, it was £53, but it's 65 now. So I basically told him to sod off. I'm going to need to return that bottle. You probably don't know about this, but I drive a Ford Transit. I was getting some bits for that from a Breakers back in February, and there was a gas place next door. Now I had a good chat with the guy, and he sells these bottles for 40 quid for the refill, but then I've got to pay 40 quid for the deposit. So I thought I better go to him and sod off that old guy. Inspecting actually both bottles. He said that his hold more because they're actually properly pressurised. It's not hobby gas, it's proper gas. So it's actually tested and it's a British standard bottle rather than a Chinese made bottle. There's a CN thing there and a British standard marking there. Anyway, let's carry on getting that floor in, and hopefully this gas might last a bit longer because they say the last few bottles lasted nearly 3 months. Isn't very long, even considering the amount of welding I'm doing.
And with that fresh cheap gas, my dad arrived to help me do a little bit of welding. Obviously I had to watch over him. But yeah, on this side, we've plug welded every single hole onto the cross members. But that does mean some of the holes are on the grooves, so we have had to chisel some of them flat to the outrigger.
Once more, we have skipped on ahead slightly, obviously, because I did the other side, and I don't really want to show all the same stuff again. Just like the other side, I've had to pair the back end of the floor pan. I've just thrown some angle iron in there, I've got that welded in. And then up against the gearbox tunnel, just like the other side, as the tunnel comes down, most of the metal wasn't good there, so I've had to bend up the new floor pan to meet it there, because these floors do have a little bit of excess to let you play around with them, because as I say, they're not the greatest fitting things in the world. The only last remaining bit of adjustment really before I think I can start to get these floors in is just squaring off the end of the floor pan. Again, they don't fit, not very square. On the other side I wasn't sure if it was me that had hashed it up a bit, but I've been really careful with the measuring and cutting on this side. I've definitely not warped anything, so I definitely think it's the floors that aren't really square. With the floor pan in place, I've just literally scored down the rear bulkhead, and that's giving me a nice line there.
So that now I can just cut along my line that I've marked out, and I should have a nice square floor pan now.
I've also trimmed a bit off the corner and then trimmed edge off there, so hopefully it can tuck under that one there. So just going to clean up this front edge here. I've scored a little line on it as well, so I'm going to cut it back to that. I've now drilled more holes, drew a line along there nicely. I also had to trim a bit more off this edge so it'll fit under the other floor pan a bit nicer. Put some grease on all the joins where it's going to go in, just to help with future rust, like we have done before. But yeah, I'm hoping this should be ready to go in now. Let's see if it fits. We're all fitted now. It's a little bit away here. When I jack it up, it does push too, so that will be fine. That edge there will be hammered to last. I'm not going to plug weld this back edge like I did last time, because last time the plug welds have to be upside down and it can be a real struggle with a lot of weld dripping down on you. So just seam it on the inside, and then the lip ever so slightly edges out so I can seam into it from above at the rear end. But first, before we get that jack pumped up and that too, because it pushed these away here, I'm going to get these plug welded in.
So I started plug welding these in, and then my nib went and I had to get that changed before I could carry on. Following this, I welded in the rear end, giving it a nice seam all the way along. Welding a bit at both sides stops the floor pan flexing up. Floor pans are big and they're very hard to clamp down. Following this, I welded to the inner sill. As you can see from the glow underneath, I'm getting really good penetration on the welds, so the panel should be in nice and solid. Just what we want really. Following this, I started getting it all welded to the gearbox tunnel. Although it is the most difficult part to do, I left it till last because once everything else is welded in, it's actually quite easy to get the lip bashed down with a hammer without all your other lines that are all lined up moving away. I think it looks quite good anyway.
And there we are, welded in. It's not too bad. Got some reasonably neat beads in there. Plenty of penetration, so it's nice and solid. Obviously I'm going to have to dress all these up now with the on grinder, and I'll get some more red oxide in there just to protect it until I'm ready for the next stage later on. In repairing the floor first, it should make the repair of the inner sill quite a bit easier too. Last time, if you don't remember, I repaired it once, did the floor, then I ended up having to chop off my inner sill repair because it was messing around with the sill. But this way, I've got my new outriggers in. The little flap at the bottom there will act as sort of a bit of a guide for roughly where the sill's going. 5mm or so, thick metal sort of thickness. So that should give us a nice little line for the inner sill. I'm just hoping it actually fits this time. And there we are, all dressed up, ready for a coat of red oxide primer.
And here we go with the trusty red oxide primer. Giving this a coat should stop surface rust before I get on to the next painting process. I don't know why, but fresh welds always seem to start rusting really quickly. Even in a reasonably dry garage like mine, some welds have left raw, unpainted for around a month, and even after that short period of time, I've still seen them get a bit of surface rust on, which isn't what we want, especially if I'm going to put like a rubberized textured yellow Schultz on there. Any rust underneath will just slowly spread and trash these floors in no time. Always better to be safe than sorry, especially when dealing with rust. And so here's the final result. It actually looks really good. Not too many warps in the floor. There's a couple, but not too many. One thing I will add, more trimming is needed on the gearbox tunnel. You have to get the angle grinder on there and trim away the excess metal. But yeah, overall the finish is really good, far better than the other side. I was quite worried about having to dish the floor pan in, but it seems to have paid off.
Right, so all that's taken a little bit longer than I thought. I've had a lot go wrong this month. The Porsche's been bits out there, the odometer stopped working, so I had to change the plastic cog at the back of the dash. One of the seat cables has snapped, so I've had to take that apart. I've not really had that much time to put into the stag. Now I realise it's been, I think, 30 days since I last put a stag video out. So yeah, I think I'm actually going to call it a video there. Originally, with the way I was filming it, the plan was to get the sill and the rear wing on, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen in this video. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button, press that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time, where we'll be tackling the inner sill, the outer sill, and the back wing. Hopefully I can actually get all that done in one video.